What is the difference between Succession and Awakenings, and which one is canon? Alright, that's cool. Let me explain this to you without confusing you too much. When Awakenings were created in the game, at no given point was there any taking into consideration of Successions, because that was not really a planned thing by Perlibis. So when Awakenings came through, there was no such thing as pre-awakening consideration of lore. The continuum of BDO story was pre-awakening into awakening, that's your class. Simple as this. Awakenings up until Nova, everything is pretty much canon awakening. You are awakening. That's your class. There's nothing afterwards. With Nova's coming to BDO, a topic of which is what becomes a thing, and she introduces this very well. The entirety, just without giving you too much detail onto the Nova's lore, I have a very big video about this, explaining it in very big detail as well here in the channel. It's a very good episode. You guys are going to love it. Nova's lore in reality is the ultimate choice whether or not to die or to live in awakening, which is something very interesting, and you guys need to understand this, that every Nova that survives is an awakening Nova, which is the first time where there is a conversation of which one can exist and which cannot. So not all classes, however, abide to these rules. For example, look at this class here, Mystic. Mystic is very interesting in that regards, in regards to canonicity, because Mystic in reality dies and is resurrected by Banha, which means that can you live without Banha? That's Mystic's question. You can go into Succession, but the big question is, of course, is that a possibility for you to exist in Succession, right? So it's a question. And bear in mind, Pearl Abyss, I don't think ever even spoke about this. I don't think they've ever even opened up a, or rather answered a question on the topic of who is, which one is canon actually. Let's just go afterwards. See, the idea of successions are necessarily kind of introduced with Elezra. So awakenings still till this day are all around the topic, almost all of them around the topic of borrowed power. This is like the motif of awakenings. Think of, okay, so Mystic, the power of Banha, Warrior, the power of Goyen, Valkyrie, the power of Venslar and the Lancia, you get the idea. Musa, the glaive which he picks, you get the idea. All of those classes with awakening, it's entirely the motif of taking external power for yourself so you become strong. So Mystic operates with Banha, Striker operates with the armor body. You get the entirety of the idea. All of those things are basically not you. Elezra comes in and introduces the topic of fighting your inner darkness to conquer it, and quote-unquote the symbiosis of the Black Spirit to be the prime motivator so you move forward, right? So that's kind of where it gets different. So the topic and the fact of the matter is, which one is canon is entirely up to you and what you play, but you make a conscious choice with this canonicity, and that is not necessarily to reject the lore and to the direction of awakenings. Rather, you need to understand that the not playing into this also stops the lore from progressing. And that's very interesting, because think of it like this. If Mystic revokes Banha, if she goes away from this probably means that she stops going in that direction as well, which cuts entire plot lines. So the same thing happens with most of the classes. Some classes, for an example, however, don't really have a say into not going into awakening. Like Dark Knight, for an example. Dark Knight's entire lore and mythos is the ever-encroaching inside darkness, which will eventually either kill you or you will get into awakening. Because this is the Dark Knight entirety of, this is the trajectory of the life of a Dark Knight. You have a shadow inside of you that will either conquer you and essentially your life will be forfeit, so eventually you will die, or you actually conquer this power, and the Vidiant, the weapon of the Dark Knights, is in reality a conduit for that power to be even more efficient. So that's like kind of the thing. Elezra shows in reality what the Dark Knights kind of go through. So when you go from awakening to succession, you could say that indeed is the canon, because Elezra is a part of the plotline and that plotline continues. The big question is what happens with the side things. And the right answer to this is that both of those are canon, but the reality is that some of those plot lines do not continue because of the choice whether or not you're succession or awakening. So yeah, that's kind of it. Most classes in that trajectory, and essentially Elezra's entire motif is reject the borrowed power and you yourself with your Black Spirit reach symbiosis and continue to be the power yourselves, because the Dark Goddess motifs everything with the Black Spirit. This is kind of the nature of BDO's lore. That's a very cool question. Thanks for that. That was fun.